welcome to the typography lesson. So I have a downloadable PDF that you can look along with me as we go through these 8 different typefaces that I've chosen that I feel like would best represent future typography trends in the next year, 2, 3 years. And as we talked about in the last lesson, what is most important about the typefaces that I've chosen is that each one has something that is not standard, something interesting, something very unique about specific characters in the typeface. So let's go ahead and start with number 1. The first one I chose was a typeface called Lust, and this is an Adobe font. And if you have an Adobe subscription, then you have access to all of the fonts that are Adobe fonts. And the first 2 will be Adobe fonts, and you'll have access to that. And I have ones that aren't Adobe fonts. So if you don't happen to have an Adobe subscription, that's okay, because a couple of my other font choices are, accessible to anyone. So this one was really interesting. I liked kind of the high contrast nature between all of these. I feel like this is elegant and very detailed. And it's best used as a display font, so larger headlines and sizes. It's inspired by Didone typefaces, as you can tell from the high contrast between the strokes. There's some unique qualities to the lowercase characters in this typeface. It has elaborate slopes and has dramatic ball terminals and makes this typeface feel very custom and illustrious. So let's take a look at the unique characteristics. This lowercase g on Lust has this unique teardrop tail. It has these super duper thin arms, which makes it a wonderful display typeface. And display typefaces are just headlines, larger type. You don't want to use this as the small, tiny body copy because all these details get lost when the typeface is used very small. And a lot of the typefaces that we'll go through in this lesson will be display typefaces, best used as a little bit larger size. You have this interesting, neat, almost just a single point stroke that connects the Q and the circle, the close counter, and the tail of the Q. And really cool ball terminals that have that teardrop shape that's pretty consistent throughout the typeface. And some really neat sloping curves on that lowercase t. And you can see some practical application of Lust. You can see it being used as a website header. And what's interesting is I'm seeing more, and this has been kind of the case for a couple of years, but serif typeface is coming back in the digital world. We used to not do serif typefaces because it was hard to use them. But now with emerging technology, we're starting to kind of bring that traditional, nice detailed look back into the digital world. We're no longer static and boring and blocky. We can be a little bit more expressive. So this one's really good being used in curves, as you can see in this little example right here. And you can see how dramatic that F is and some of these sloping characters. And so you can really tuck these letters in to create some really fun looking headlines that are very elegant yet playful. And it also pairs very well with a sans serif typeface. There's one called Epitaph, and it is another Adobe font. And I think being unique is part of standing out in the future of typography, as I mentioned before, but this typeface does that and features very custom qualities. It has sharper points and lines on its slab serifs, arms, and crossbars. This only comes in one font style, that is regular, so it does not lend itself well outside of the larger headlines, phrases, and names. So once again, a display typeface. This typeface does a good job at setting itself apart from others, giving you a unique twist to your headlines or logos. So let's take a look quickly at some of these unique characteristics. So the most unique character I found was the lowercase o. It has this little mark as the lowercase o, and it's inspired by the older Latin presentation of o, or in some cases other languages to denote certain vowel pronunciation. But it looks really interesting. It just kind of throws you for a loop to have that little dot there below the O. And you can see in this little practical projects I put together when I was trying to discover what typefaces I like. I did all these extra projects to see how these can be used in real life on real world projects. And I found that this looked really good on this can. It gave it just a little bit of a fun spin on the typography, which paired very well with the brand. It also has this really interesting diagonal stem, or in this case an arm on the uppercase F. and also has a really interesting arrow pointing type style to the uppercase A. It almost looks like an arrow pointing down. Super unique. And you can see this curves on the concaved curved serifs on the lowercase t. Once again, all very interesting. And they have such unique characters to their uppercase and lowercase. So not using cap lock gives you this interesting rounded E, and using cap lock or doing a capital letter gives you kind of more of a sharper edge. And this looks really good distorted and warped because it has very thick lines and very consistently thick lines, unlike the first one we talked about. I did not decide to include this on the list, but I thought it was too unique not to show you guys. This one is Moriam Pro Headline, and it's also an Adobe font. And this typeface features lots of contrast in the strokes throughout the letters, just like that first Lust example. And this one exaggerates just about everything. It includes the use of curly tails that are great for overlapping to create calligraphy style effects. The uppercase here is a little tough to use, but try experimenting with a lot of the lowercase letters. So the uppercase letters they're very elaborate, very crazy. I wanted to show you some of these details I really appreciated about this typeface. So it has this very nice curvy details. And look at this lowercase f, that curly Q thing, that tail that just comes out and then curls underneath. Super unique. This lowercase L, super exaggerated swash extenders, and had really interesting rounded ball terminals. And also the spur. This is what's called a spur on the bottom of the K. You don't see this in a lot of typefaces. I just thought it kind of added some unique traditional values to it. So you can see this being used in headlines, mostly in overlapping those tails and those extenders over each other to kind of make it look like they're connected. And you see that a lot in handwritten typography that's super popular. You kind of see that same intertwining things with all these extended curves and swashes. And this is the next typeface. And this is, you can find this on defont.com. It's by Gilar Studio. And if you want, and it's free for personal use, but if you wanted to use this in a client project or for commercial license, like you want to put it on a t-shirt and sell it, you can buy a commercial license to it. But you are free to use it in your personal portfolio for fun as long as you're not making money off of it. But I thought this was super duper elegant, really great for a luxurious high-end brand. So I feel like it's this consistent wavy features throughout its characters are really unique. So it's best to use this sparingly because there is all this elaborate details to it. So we don't want to have these big long headlines with some of these typefaces because they are so elaborate. This is a body wash brand I created just to test out this typeface to see, okay, this looks all nice and cool, but can it actually work on a project? And yes, I found out it can. I feel like it really dressed up this layout and design without having to have all these extra design elements because the typography itself is a very nice detailed design element. So you don't need to add all this other stuff to make it feel like it's filled out. And I think it works really well rounded as well. You can see here in this little logo, you can see it used really good in abbreviations and very short headlines and brand names. It looks really good. Step Work Sans. And what's great about this, it's free for everybody. So you can find it at fonts.google.com. You'll be able to type it in. Anybody can download it and use it. Always check the license on each one of these. Most Google fonts are free for personal use and commercial, but please check each license before you use it for any paid or commercial work. So the name is very fitting because you can really put this typeface to work. It features every single font weight you could ever want, including thin all the way up to super thick ultra weight. So this is one of the few in this list that you can use for small type, large type, any type. It's not just a display type. You can use it for the small legal copy at the bottom of a page. It's very readable. And there's nothing fancy about this typeface, but it has a consistent, super low contrast weight throughout, and it gives it a super readability at this small size. So let's take a look at some of the unique characteristics. So as I said before, it's got very consistent, steady stroke widths, so very low contrast, which makes it very readable. And so that means you can create all sorts of different warped looks to your headlines, or you can do something with contrast by having one be a thin weight and one being a bold weight. And what's great about this is it's super duper simple. It's kind of could be used like you use Helvetica, just like a really nice, modern, slick looking, easy to use sans. Next up is Italiana. This font can be found on Google Fonts, so it's open and free for anyone to use. Just make sure you check your license. But Italiana is inspired by the calligraphy of the Italian masters. This sophisticated typeface is another display typeface best used for headlines. And it's also another Didone type font, and it has high contrast in its strokes. So some of the unique characteristics is it's got these really short arms, very similar to the other Didone typeface we talked about a few ones ago. But I really love how the numbers look. And sometimes you can use a typeface for just its numbers if you're looking for a really elegant, highly detailed typeface. Also, it has these really interesting shortened curved terminals, as you can see in this uppercase J. And I love this uppercase V, has that little unique curved terminal at the top of that arm. And so some practical applications is, make sure to use this as larger sized text, smaller sized text. Some of these nice details will not really be shown. And once again, try testing this out with numbers. I always like to have a couple of really nice typefaces I use for numbering, especially with infographics and magazine editorials. I like to have some really nice ones in my back pocket, especially ones that have serifs. So a lot of great ways to use this in logo design as well. This next one is called OTR Type, and another great open source font that you can download. It is free for personal and commercial use. Always check the license when you go to download, but it looks to be pretty open, so you can use this on projects big and small. And this OTR type is a geometric sans serif grotesque typeface that pushes the envelope of normal. The wide version, there's a regular and there's a wide, and the wide version is especially interesting and postmodern. It could be a showstopper if used correctly. And when I mean wide, it is wide. It really extends out. You've heard of condensed typography, which we actually talked about last year. In the 2021 design trends, we talked about how condensed fonts were very popular, so we can squeeze a lot into short social media posts. This is the exact opposite. This is super wide. So you got to be careful. These are going to be very short words and phrases that you're going to use this for. So I tried to figure out, okay, I really want to use this in a very modern brand. So I decided to create my own protein powder because I wanted to be able to figure out how to practically use a typeface like this, because I really liked how interesting and extra wide and unique it was. So I was able to pair it well. I'm not using a lot of it, but I paired it well with the typeface we're going to go over in the next typeface that we're going to go over. I paired these together. But I really like how it extends upward toward the bag. It really provides this unique little word out there. And that leads us to our last one. And this one is also free to use. Once again, always check a license, but it should be free to use for personal use and commercial use. It is a contemporary geometric sans serif typeface. It has extra extended characters and is very condensed. You could pack a lot of letters in a narrow space. So this is literally the opposite of the last typeface we went over. And it has almost a grotesque-like appearance with non-parallel arms and legs. Not everything is perfectly parallel, and has slightly various widths. Those characteristics give it a little bit of different and interesting, and best used for very modern boundary-pushing brands. So once again, I paired that with the last typeface that we used. So I put those both together. We have a very condensed typeface and a very wide extended typeface. And I feel like I paired those together well. It kind of adds this modern, slick touch to the bag. I really love using this as a headline. This typeface is very versatile, very great for posters, headlines, product bags, like in this example. You can warp it, you can change it, you can I just love these little non-parallel lines, like you can definitely tell in this example with the L's, how it's not parallel. So it just adds that little bit of interesting, but it's still super readable. This is a super readable typeface. And so I really enjoyed using this one for that project. So yeah, I spent quite a bit of hours trying to pick this list, because I just didn't want to pick lists I thought were cool. I wanted to actually try each one of these to see if that would actually be a typeface that you can start to add and maybe think about using for some design pieces in your portfolio, so you could look a little bit more trending and a little bit more forward thinking with some of your typeface choices. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. We are going to next do a practical project together. We're going to just put this together really quickly. We're not going to go over step-by-step software instruction. That's assumed that you already know that. We're going to go right into thinking about the layout and the colors and how am I going to actually use some of these trending fonts and typefaces.